Stephen, you're up.
Okay, good. Thank you for this opportunity, Dick. Nice to be with you all. And yes, I know that for a long time you have been mostly working with the near-death experiences, and I believe this study group has been focusing upon many near-death people, people who have experienced sometimes a few minutes of truly, leaving their bodies, having wonderful experiences on other planes, contacts perhaps with angels, getting involved with inspiration, maybe healings, and then returning to their bodies with a brand new view. I have attended many talks similar to that, as well as read quite a few different books also on that same subject. I have been working in sort of a parallel way for many, many years, connected with hypnotherapy, but working with spiritual past life regression, as well as the life between life integration sessions. And I've been doing that for quite a few decades. And I've collected quite a few different interesting stories of individuals who basically are telling me while they are in trance about being in some past life, some interesting place in China or India or Scotland, and then having a death, going to the other side, sometimes being stuck for a while, perhaps in the bardo or in the in-between space, and then as a difference with the near-death experiencers who come back to their bodies, back to their present lives. These people, of course, are recalling their past life experiences when they truly left their bodies. It was the end. It was death. But of course, as we probably all know in this group, that's not the end. They just transitioned into another place, another space. And I wanted to bring forth a couple of interesting perspectives that I jotted down and published in one of my books. And I wrote the Inner Journeys, Cosmic Sojourns. There's 2 volumes to this, and you can find that on Barnes and Noble and Amazon and some other places. But this here is a collection of stories that really tell some interesting tales that many times one can say we all have experienced. And that would include a life, whether that be short or long, loves, losses, lessons, experiences, and then a death. And then after the death, one goes into that in-between place. And sometimes right there, someone can stay in kind of this holding pattern because they have to figure something out. Something was either not resolved or they were not really in agreement with how they died. And sometimes there's even a confusion about, am I dead? There's been more than one time when I am working with somebody, they're in a hypnotic trance, they have their death, and then they go on to tell me, okay, now I'm walking through the woods, and I'm not very hungry. I'm observing sometimes other people, but they don't seem to be looking at me. And then, the next scene comes around, and it's the next day, and I'm still walking around, and I'm going over to this creek and just enjoying the peacefulness of nature. And by this point, I'm thinking to myself, well, now they were at that point of death. Now they're walking around in the woods, but they're not sleeping. They're not eating. No one's talking to them. there's no interaction, I think we've got ourselves a ghost. And what a good theme here for Halloween, huh? And indeed, once I, start to ask them, well, okay, you do notice that no one is talking to you. You aren't interacting with anybody. And yes, they say, come to think of it, I am kind of see-through-y that I'm not hungry. I can go on and on. I don't sleep at night. No, I don't think I have a body anymore. But sometimes these souls are a little bit lost, and some of them really did not get it that they had transitioned, that they had moved on, but they keep on going in their experience of, okay, so now what's next? Now, some of these souls are in the state of denial or confusion. Sometimes they just need a time out. Like that life was just too much. I was tired. I am going to take a walk in the woods. For about 10 years. Which, of course, to the spirit, to the soul, it's like, boom, but then, as I said, some of them are working something out. They are brooding. They are pretty unhappy. They are not ready to transition, not ready to move on. And then one day, a little light, a beam maybe, comes down, shines upon them, and they feel the warmth again. And it could be their child that they love so much who had died years earlier than them. It could be a father, a mother, and they're at first kind of surprised. Oh, where have you been? But it's like, oh, welcome home. Come, let's go home. And there's tears and joy and light. And it's time. Now, there are other things that I have found that the belief system that we have right here upon the earth can be carried to the other side. It's this idea that, oh, we're dead, that personality is finished, we go, we're now a spirit, we're now free. I have seen this many times, that the conditioning can follow one into the other side. One life in particular was really quite intense, and I had to really kind of follow it for a while to even understand what was happening to this young girl. It first starts off with this man in his 40s who is in the building trades, and he is a muscular fellow. He's kind of a no-nonsense guy, but he is interested in spirituality to the extent that he was interested in following his past lives, wanting to understand. So, curiosity. Who was I? What did I do? What did I learn? No big agenda. So we go into a trance and we go back 220 years when he was a she in Kansas, a young girl with a hellfire and damnation father who was the local minister. And of course, she and her siblings had to just toe the line, be good little Christians, and just follow the rules. And they were pretty strict rules. Now, she being a young female, she had some extra rules in that Christian family. So she was, stuck doing the dishes, taking care of things, and just, following all of the precepts that the father absolutely knew was true. So she got a little bit bored, as you might imagine. And out there in Kansas, remember, this is kind of like the Wild West. And one day, a wily traveling salesman came into town, and boy, did he talk pretty. And she was caught up in his words, and these were different than her father's words. And she got pulled along, and he told her about other places and big cities and nice petticoats and a very different life. And they took walks out into the country, and all this, of course, the father did not know. Father could not know. And, besides, she was 16 years old at the time. And so next thing she knows, she was pregnant.
Oh.
And she knew her father was not going to be happy with this particular story. In fact, she knew that she had made a great sin. Next thing she knew, that clever-tongued salesman had left town.
Oh, good.
So she was now at the mercy of her father, who she did not want to tell this to. She did not want him to confront her, because she knew, she had years of training. She knew that this was another sin, that she did not have a husband and she was pregnant. She did not know what to do. She hid, she fretted, she consulted a local woman who helped her to rid herself of the problem. And this was another sin upon sin, and she knew she was going to hell. She was distraught. She did not know what to do. So she just left the family, went to a nearby town, and a young, ignorant, penniless, lost young girl, a local tavern took her in, and she started drinking. Another sin. Next thing she knew, she was earning a living by ill repute.
Oh, God.
She was going to hell. And so at this point, and it's like, so what?
We were all whores.
Yeah. Yeah. And her father would tell her that in a second. So she took her life. Another sin. After she died, she hid in the shadows of the town. She hid from the light of the sun. She was not going to let the rays of the light of the sun shine upon her, because she would be sent to hell. Finally, her beloved departed grandmother came to her and said, My dear girl. You are beloved. Come home with me. She reached out her hand and went into the light. And saw that indeed she was not going to hell. She was with her beloved grandmother. And soon she was surrounded by loving light beings. And it dawned on her slowly that her father was indoctrinating her with a bunch of lies that were not true. And she could go on and she could go back to her spirit family. And then she was reborn as my client, a man who was totally shocked that this story came out of his mouth.
Oh, God. Oh,
Stephen, that's amazing that you can get these stories out of people after
yeah.
repressing them. You have a special gift. You are talented. By the way, we're passing your books around here. I have both of them, and everybody here has seen them.
Excellent. Thank you, Dick. So I go now to a section in this book. It's volume 2, and it's the 4th chapter, Personalities Stuck in Dilemmas, Before and After Death. And here is a quote. We often discover what we'll do by finding out what we'll not do. And probably he who never made a mistake never made a discovery. Samuel Smiles, born in 1812, a Scottish author. And so my client is named Carol, and she comes to me, and she is a vivacious woman, quick to say what's happening, and speaks her mind. And she was a very good client, and from her came many different voices. I was really quite entertained by her because her voice, her personality would change during these sessions. And during one session, and some of these sessions last 3, sometimes 4 hours long because they're really quite intense. And she had 2 past lives, 2 deaths, and one death was as a woman farmer, and her death was really quite easygoing, pleasant. It was like a nice welcome back into a nice cornfield. But then she had other experiences. So let me read from this particular chapter from Carol. A Gemini by birth, and a soul that is drawn to dualities, to contrasts. Recalled a life as Lizzie, an American housewife living on a farm in the 1800s. In the same session, we come across another life as a young man, born right after Lizzie. Her descriptions are rich and nuanced. Her voice and tone change when he shows up. He is young and scrappy. In a city, Philadelphia, I see him swaggering. He's poor, and he's doing something about it. He just signed up. It is 1917.
Oh, well.
Then shipped out. He just died fast.
Oh, God.
He hardly got started. Sad. And so I say, yes, that was quick. What is his name? His name. I can't decide. Tom or Clark Thompson. And he smiles, even in the midst of poverty. Regardless, he and they, those around him, are positive. We have a big family. I have many siblings. People ask me, why sign up? Ha! I give them that smile and I tell them, you have to do what you have to do. And that is what I did. My brother Phil already joined. He is older than me by 2 years. He went first. But that's not why I went. It's what had to be done. And so I'm thinking to myself, and I write here in the parentheses, social conditioning from another era. And I ask her, I know that he just died fast, so please go to when Clark died and right after. And then she jerks. Hey, says he, this is not a slow fade. This is a quick yank. Remember that she had that other life as Lizzie, and it was a very peaceful death. She was shocked that this one was not the same, which is a story for us all, that not every death is the same and not every transition into the other spirit world is the same. And so he goes on. It is not beautiful. It is dark, jarring, somewhat like the military. By your bootstraps, sucked in and out. Here I am. But where? I don't sit by anyone. This is so different than the first death when I was that farmer's wife. This happened so quick. Rat-a-tat-tat. Right across my chest. Boom, boom. Bullets. Across my chest. Bullets everywhere. The battlefield. I get somewhere in France. You don't really expect this. I don't think I'm going to stand up now and be dead. Now, this is strange, he says, as an aside. A voice from the future talks to me. And then Carol, remember, now we're talking, this is Carol doing all the talking, right? Carol asks, aren't you sad to leave your family? Now, Clark responds, I say, no, they are fine. A big clan. The weird thing is, I'm surprised that Carol is talking to me and she doesn't know the answer. Aren't we related?
That's funny.
Yeah. And so I hear in parentheses, I say, two lives with a shared soul or orienting. I love it. So she talks to me. I tell her my name is Clark, but they call me Boxer. Anyway, it was all too much, this war. They tell you you are doing the right thing and give you a gun. Do it with a gun. So I feel I was doing the wrong thing, shooting someone. Then I get, if you don't do that, you'll be in a lot of trouble. Follow orders. But I was taught, thou shalt not kill. But that's what you do. It's not so easy to pull that trigger. I hesitated more times than I'd like to admit. It's not easy. You have to kill someone against your upbringing. It's not easy. And so then I ask, Boxer, what happened after that? Don't call me Boxer. It's odd coming from you. And so then I say here as an aside, a past life personality who died in 1917, not wanting me, a guy from the 21st century, getting personal. But then he goes on. No, this is not like Lizzie and her death. This place, after death, is a darker place. Not scary, though, calm, a stillness, but energized. Lizzie was in an alive place. I don't see too many people. I see two. One feels like a teacher, a person of wisdom. One feels like a friend who winks at me. Huh? It's Kendra, my best friend. Am I making this up? She laughs at me now. She has a message, but I don't like it. She is laughing and tells me, pull yourself together. You are totally on track. Huh? How can that be? Shooting, being shot. She goes on, just accept that it's all right. And then Carol butts in. Carol, of course, is the woman I'm hypnotizing. She says, but it feels like shit. And so I say aside here, wow, we've got a three-way talk or a debate happening in trance. But then he goes on, Boxer, who I shall not call Boxer. Yeah, I hear, but it's all right. Accept the shit. But you know that it is the universal plan. Just manage. Carol then says, I'm going to tell Kendra, who's the female that she knows that was in a past life with Boxer, right? Okay, who's now Kendra, her friend. Okay, I'm going to kick your ass when I see you next. We both laugh. Now Boxer is leaving. He did what he needed to. I just got shot and died. Stood up when it was time to stand up and got shot. And I note he questioned society in his last days. And Carol today does too. Yes, his doubts had consequences. Question everything, which is what his present personality does. She is questioning everything. But it started from that life in 1917 when he was only in France for probably 2 weeks, volunteered in a very brave, patriotic manner, but then was conflicted about he's supposed to kill other people. He wasn't raised like that. And so that began his questioning just before he died. And then now picking it up in the present life as Carol, and she is questioning everything. By the way, something very interesting with Carol. That young man, when he stood up, the rat-a-tat-tat, the submachine gun, I guess, went across his chest. And she, when she was a teenager, her right breast did not grow. That was where the bullets went in. And so she got reconstructive surgery and, but always kind of wondered, well, that's kind of a weird thing that didn't happen. But it made more sense because she saw in that trance that is exactly where the bullets went in. And there was already a conflict at that point. And then we see the cause and the effect in the present life with those bodily injuries that turned into sort of a delayed growth in her life. So I'm going to make a bit of a pause right here. I've already given you quite a few different themes. Any ideas, questions, feedback, anything you'd like to say, anyone?
I have a question. What methodology does a person use to convince a spirit that it is dead when they don't believe they are. And therefore, you can lead them to the light and get rid of them out of the basement. Well, in this case, out of the basement. What methodology do you suggest?
Okay, Kathy, we're talking about probably two different things. One is when I'm working with somebody who has died in a past life and they either don't know that they're dead or they basically turn into a ghost for a while. And then there's a couple different ways to work with them. But I think you're talking about an entity or a soul that may be still haunting your space.
My girlfriend's two cousins were involved in a sudden auto accident, and they planted themselves in her basement and made a hell of a mess in the basement. And my boyfriend and I worked with them for a long time, trying to figure different methods to convince them that they were dead, because they believed this was their house because it was the grandmother's house. Yeah. And they lived in it. And we couldn't convince them to leave. It took us a long time to do it. And I was wondering if you have any suggestions as to methodology that could be used to get a spirit to realize they're dead. That's the first step, is to realize they're dead and then convince them to go to the light.
Exactly. Yep. Very good. And, doing house cleaning, blessings of homes, using incense, smudging, light, candles, going to the four corners of each story in a home, making the prayers and blessings kind of sets the stage for things like that. And then there is this free will. And the free will is right there, that if they don't want to go, then they don't have to go. Okay. However, if they're confused, then that is going to be something more like a teaching or an illumination for them. And then we can say, yes, if you wish, you can stay, but maybe you have a message. And sometimes I find that that's oftentimes the case, that there may be a message, there's something left to be said, and they want to pass that on, and then it's off their chest, and then they can go. Now, sometimes they can just be really rather recalcitrant, and they're just going to be hanging out because I want to.
This wasn't because they want to, it's because I live here. This is my home.
Right, yeah.
They actually lived in that home for a period of time.
Right. This is my home. Yeah. And so that is kind of an earthbound focus, being overly attached towards things, upon the third dimension where we live. And at that point, I'm going to be asking them, do they also recall a time before they lived in the house? A time when they felt a real freedom, when they felt an openness, a light. And then there are angels. And many times I'm going to call forth an angel as an escort. And I said, if you would like to go to that time when indeed you had such a wonderful home, much bigger, much greater than the one that you're in right now, then let's call forth an angel that would lovingly escort you back home, back to the greater light, back to your true home. Would you like that? And that's usually pretty convincing, especially if they start feeling the warmth and the light, then they're going to be on their way.
Well, in this case, to complicate it more, they spoke in German. And my boyfriend doesn't even know what German is. He's never heard anybody speak in German. And he was interacting with the spirits in German, and he never spoke German in his life. Because we know this, because my girlfriend knows German, and we were sitting at the top of the stairs watching it all. And we could hear it. And eventually, Tony convinced him to go. But they did it all in German, so I don't know how he did it, but he did it. But it took many, many tries to do it.
Das finde ich ausgezeichnet. Wenn jemand braucht, irgendwann, jemand auf Deutsch, etwas nach oben zu gehen, dann werden wir das tun.
Well, I don't know what you said.
Sometimes you just go out and find somebody who works with spirit who speaks a particular language, and you invite them to help you out.
Well, I was just interested in your opinion.
You're right, right. Well, I hope that's helpful, and it's interesting
it
that
is.
it did take another language, but very much like you can say, do you remember another light, another home, a greater home than where you are at right now? Then you can also say in English, ah, yes, you know, beyond English, there is a language that we all share. And as I communicate to you, that is being translated into your heart through my words.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have other tales to tell.
If you don't mind, I do have a question.
Uh-huh.
So I know that time, you know, time supposedly only exists here. It doesn't exist when you get to the spirit realm. I've heard that many people say that before. So well, first of all, do you believe is that your belief as well?
No.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
No.
Because I was just wondering, have you ever had anyone who was hypnotized who remembered like a future life? But I guess you probably haven't.
Yes, I have.
You have.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you?
Yeah, those are called, you know, many times regressions, going into the past. And of course, just by definition, that's playing with time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a progression, you go into the future. And many years ago, decades ago, other people were asking me about progressions and wondering like, oh, who am I? What am I going to be in my next life? You know, and so, oh, well, how interesting that is. So we had a couple of sessions, and they described this life, you know, in 2105. And but then we go, well, that's a really good story, but how do you know if it's true? Or is that imagination? Or is it real true? So I did an experiment, and I had quite a few different people in which we said, let's do a short-term progression about 6 months or 1 year from now, and go into a trance, make some predictions about, you know, things that would unfold. And then in 6 months or 1 year, we're going to find out if it's true. It was never true. They were false. They were wrong predictions. It didn't happen. And so I stopped doing progressions. Now, dealing with time, of course, past life regressions is always dealing with time. But this is where Edgar Cayce comes in. Time is a dimension. And Edgar Cayce told us that we here on the earth, we are in the third dimension. And one dimension we think of as mass, which is length by width by depth. Okay, and we think that, oh, that's the third dimension, length by width by depth. That's mass. That's our space here. And Casey says, yeah, no, that's one dimension called space. So we have time, we have space, and the third dimension on Earth, are you sitting down? Is patience.
Wow.
Edgar Cayce. And I must admit, it took me some years to ponder that. What is this about? Is patience so important that it is a dimension of experience? Wow. But I tell you what, you take a look around, including in the mirror, and you may find that you're dealing with somebody who's impatient. I want my spirit, I want my revelation, and I want it now.
Thank you.
So being here upon the earth, we are dealing with patience. But in the sessions that I have, we sometimes play with time so that we go back and forth in time, and something that was an issue 300 years ago, we can resolve playing with time, moving outside of time, and then coming back here to our present time, resolving it, coming to a conclusion in a past, and then having the release right now in the present time. So we're going back and forth in time to deal with issues, and something that can be resolved in the past can have a positive effect right now. Interesting, eh?
Stephen,
Yes.
have you seen, or you've had clients, and I'd like you to just affirm that there are opportunities to go into the past lifetime and resolve issues of psychological issues, maybe neuroses or anything, any mental or emotional problems in just one or a few sessions.
Yes, yes. And that is, I must admit, very gratifying to do that. And oftentimes I mean, there's like, 20 different techniques on how to do that. But one that is very effective and quite uplifting is after the death, when the person might feel still heavy, physically heavy after death, from the issues, from the emotions, from the sadness, and they are dragging themselves up into spirit because they haven't let go of some particular issue, and that's the part that needs to be resolved. So then I orchestrate things with the help of their spirit guide, with the help of maybe the soul group. Let us take that past life personality, recognizing that we may have the personality here, and then the soul that left the personality, and the soul is who we're really working with at this point. But that earthly personality is still dragging. Okay, so then we invite in a healing circle in spirit, calling forth spirit guides, angels, whoever wants to come and join in the healing. And let's invite this past life personality into the center of the circle, and let's have a healing. Direct the love, light, and wisdom to that personality with its various issues, and then drop the pain, the hurt, the sorrow. And when that is done, and I'm not going to rush it, I'll get these confirmations. Oh my goodness, this past personality is now smiling. This past person is now lighter, relaxed, can move, can maybe dance. And then it's like, got it, And when that is done, automatically it's done with the present. Even though it's like a subconscious heaviness that they may not really have a clear idea about, but it could be something about being persecuted, not being worthy, having fear of groups because that's what did them in, but they can't quite put their finger on a personal present life event that would really explain that. It was explained in the past life. But then through that healing, and this is quite of an effective thing, you might want to do that with your group there, Dick. Just, periodically just having somebody bring in some emotional issue, and you all create that circle yourselves, sending in the positive light and love, and then just saying, release, release, allow it to be released, and just feel it just drop. Lots of different good.
What do you foresee in the field of therapy regarding the use of past life regression to resolve such issues? So many psychologists seem stuck in talk therapy, and they really are not open to past life regression.
That is so true. And I'd have to say, in comparison, especially if we start moving towards Freudian psychoanalysis, that someone could be like talking for 20 years, 2 or 3 times a week, which adds up financially. And they may still be dealing with things. I remember this one woman who was very proud about the fact that she had been in therapy for 20 years
Well,
and she still hated her mom. So, oh, well, maybe it's time to try something else. But interestingly enough, psychology has the word psyche in it, which means soul.
Mhm.
And a lot of psychologists don't know that, don't relate to it. They say, well, of course, it's not the soul. What they really meant was the mind. And so they're limited. And truly, I think that hypnotherapy is one of the fastest forms of therapy because it goes very deep. It can go into multiple levels. It can go into past lives and go into, dimensional sorts of things that a classically trained psychotherapist would not even go to. Interesting thing about that is that here's now a paradigm, and a paradigm is like how you perceive the whole world, how you think things are. And many people who are involved with Edgar Cayce have got a broader paradigm of how things are. But if you don't believe that there's a past life, you're not going to ask about past life, right? I mean, that's a waste of time, or you don't believe in angels. Well, no use discussing that because that's probably some sort of fantasy. So you have to be kind of open, broad to many different possibilities. And then you have so much to work with, different levels. And so, of course, it's going to be quicker, smoother, faster. So in comparison, and Brian Weiss, MD, who wrote quite a few different books on reincarnation, because his client told him in a trance about a past life. He wasn't going there by himself. He wasn't asking, but him, like a teacher that I worked with, Michael Newton, their clients brought them to the party. Their clients opened them up to the possibilities. And then they said, wow, okay, thank you. I'm going to ask a couple more questions. Good for them that once it was brought to them, they said, oh, I think there's something going on here beyond of what was my training. And so let's follow this where it may go. And they are just 2 good examples of trained either PhDs or MDs who really got deeply into reincarnation and beyond, and then helped many other people to be open to it.
Stephen, I just want you to know that I've always considered you brilliant. And I appreciate that you are sharing the experiences, the wisdom, the learning that you have gathered over decades of practice. We are indeed fortunate and blessed tonight for you to broaden our minds and our souls.